Hello and welcome to Ramp Virtual. My name is Packy McCormick. I'll be your host today, coming to you live from Ramp HQ in New York City. I'm here with the co-founders, Eric and Karim. We're going to talk about Ramp's recent $750 million fundraise at an $8.1 billion valuation, making it one of the fastest fintech companies in history. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how they do what they do, why they're doing what they're doing, and what the future of finance looks like. So as you're listening along and following along, we want to hear from you with the hashtag RampLive on LinkedIn, on Twitter, across social media, hashtag RampLive. As you have any questions, tweet them out. To get started, though, what does the future of finance look like if Ramp is successful?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in today, Packy. And before we even go into the future, I'll start with the past. Which is, for Ramp, what we're trying to do is help companies automate their finances. And we talk about a finance automation platform. We got here by offering the fastest growing corporate card in the US with built-in expense management, bill payments, accounting automation, and the like. And all of our products are focused on helping companies spend less money and spend less time. And so in many ways, we take this paradigm of how can we actually help companies at the other end. And our view at Ramp of what this future can look like is actually having your financial service partners, instead of trying to outsmart you, instead of trying to figure out how can they get you to spend more money, earn point multipliers, rewards, and the like, instead thinking about how can they help the company on the other end be more profitable. And so we think about this a lot in the context of where are companies wasting time, what are the processes we can automate away, and also where are companies wasting money. Look, we're excited. So far, we've saved our customers more than $135 million. We've helped automate 400 years of manual work away. And we think that the future will look a lot more like this.
So obviously, Ramp makes money on interchange. You make money as a percentage of what your customers spend, and you've helped your customers spend intentionally $135 million less, which means less revenue for you. Why? Like, strategically, what is the reason for doing that?
Yeah. So if you look at financial services in the U.S. And you think about the evolution of the credit card over the past 30 years, you come to the conclusion there hasn't been a whole lot. You're my parents' credit card was very similar to the credit card that we've had growing up, and there's been very little in the way of innovation. But over the past few years, suddenly there's been this window to attack and actually have a different way of building than what's been possible in the past. When we started just 3 years ago, we had 0.0% market share. Today, as fast as we've grown, we're still just getting started. And so we're very happy to trade off and make less in the near run, and frankly, in the long run, because one, it helps us grow, and two, because we think it's the right thing. And we think that if we help companies succeed and be more profitable, better versions of themselves, they'll build more enduring, longer lasting businesses. And we can also, too, go the distance. Lastly, I'd say, I think there's a lot of folks in the industry who spend a lot of time thinking about how do they optimize that margin? How do they get people to spend more, minimize the cost of rewards? And it's led to a lot of zero-sum thinking. Our view is that there is so much more value than just interchange alone. Helping companies in the first place not spend that dollar they don't need to is literally 100 times more powerful than getting 1% cash back on it. And so we're focusing a lot on identifying areas that drive wasted money, wasted time at businesses, and helping them build better and more enduring companies.
On the software side, how do you think about building products that help companies save less and or spend less? And what's the importance in a market like the one that we're in right now, where it seems like everybody is talking about companies needing to get to profitability and spend less? How do you think about that from the software perspective?
Well, we think, we want Ramp and the Ramp product to be the smart choice for companies, right? Like, if it becomes the smart choice for companies because it's obviously helping them save time, save money, then by default, like, we will get some of the smarter, more ambitious companies on Ramp. And these companies tend to outperform their peers, grow very quickly, and they help push our thinking as well. They're more demanding from us in the types of products they need. They're very discerning on things like the quality of the UX or the speed of our software. And I think it makes us better to be working with customers that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in their industries, whether it's like getting like fabricating the devices in space, or even like just scaling like farming operations and solving the future of food. So we have lots of customers on our platform, and our focus is in making them like better, more effective, smarter, and our software is helping them do this. So speed is key.
Speed is
Yeah.
exactly where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
And you talk to anybody about the company, and the product velocity is the thing that they talk about. How do you build the team? When I wrote about it last week, this was one of the most fascinating things, is how you build the team to, one, build new products, but then two, respond to customer requests as well. It feels like there's a lot going on,
Yeah.
and you're able to move forward pretty quickly.
Yeah, like a couple of guiding principles, I think that help us get to that speed and quality. So I'll talk about a few of them, but like a big one is to really truly figure out like what parts of our product need to optimize for speed versus quality. And I know some people on our team will argue that there is no trade-off. Like you got to really focus on both, but there's different ways to get it. So for example, in some parts of our um, the product that we're building, it's a lot more important to just iterate into like the final form of your solution. And for that, you need to just try lots of things very quickly. And if they don't work, recover from them extremely quickly. And yes, you'll get to the optimal solution, but it will take a couple iterations. And in other parts of our company and our product, when we're dealing with money movement or risk, I think the cost of making mistakes is a lot higher. And in those parts of the business, we cannot sort of iterate our way into the optimal solution. We need to get it right the first time. And sort of like the testing and the theory is very important. So a lot of the trick is or the strategy here is figure out what parts of the business we need to operate in the first way, and what parts need to operate in the second way, and really splitting the teams accordingly, as opposed to having a one size fits all approach, which is what you commonly see at some larger tech companies, where everything sort of looks the same. It's all like 6 engineers, one product managers, one designer, and like all the teams kind of look the same and are interchangeable. That's not how we operate.
Yeah, I mean, at a previous company, I won't exactly say which one, there was the process to deploy, new products. The level of scrutiny, whether it was almost identical, whether you were changing an interest rate or changing the color of a button. And so it just meant that this pace of iteration crawled to a halt. And I think a lot of financial services are really like this, where there's good intentions, they've hired great engineers and the like, but the actual process of designing, of shipping software hasn't moved like the rest of the technology world for the past 30 years. And in many ways, a lot of what we've tried to do from the get-go with Ramp was trying to figure out where and what are parts from an infrastructure, customer demand reason, or regulatory reasons you want to be really slow, really buttoned up, really careful. Isolate to that area and make sure you do it right. And then parts that really should embrace a fast pace of innovation, move fast.
So that brings us to the second half of save time and save money. That's the first half, which is saving time. So you've built products that replace all sorts of software that I think people on the live stream are going to be familiar with, which isn't the most fun to use, takes a lot of time. You built them really quickly and they work well. I'm a customer myself. Can you tell me about how you think about saving time, and how the people who are listening and watching right now, like, can picture them using it in their kind of daily work lives?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things first. Before we shipped a single card, went to work for a single customer, we talked with about 100 finance teams, founders, you name it, to understand where was their wasted money, where was their wasted time, what were a lot of the processes. And something that just jumped out really, really quickly was this notion of, to do one thing that I have to do every month, to report to investors, to pay my taxes, to figure out my expenses, profitability, to close my books. I need to use like 3 or 4 different systems. I need a card, expense software, I need accounting software, I need a bunch of other stuff all linked up and stitched together. Nobody was happy with it. People felt like there was a lot of waste between it. And I think that what was kept us up was figuring out, is like, how did the world get to be this way? Where for someone who just wanted to do one task, it was so disparate and separate. So one of the first things that we did was really try to understand the problem itself before jumping the solution to ways to figure it together. Understand the problems itself. And I think that we're motivated a lot by aphorisms like Henry Ford, who wanted to a car, not a faster horse, is one of the values, and figuring out how could you actually streamline the activity. And so I think before even saving time or trying to tie back to that, it really starts with first, can you really understand what are the sources of waste, where are problems coming from, and can you design a simpler, more intuitive, and fewer step solution around that? It's been a lot of the philosophy, and it's helped. I mean, when I think even take that first example of expense management. Even today, for most companies that are on, incumbent systems, let's say like a Concur or Expensify, if you really do the math and you actually see how long does it take from an average swipe to the time that a receipt is turned in, and a company is in a position to close their books, depending on how hygienic your company is, and how much people value their time. People are, that's usually days to weeks between swipe to getting the receipts in.
Feels fast for me.
Right.
Receipts.
There was a customer last week who told me that they submitted, I think it was 6 months of expenses.
Yeah.
Their finance team was not too happy. And look, what's very different is we built a fully integrated system where your expense policy ties into how your card actually works in reality. We prompt people for receipts the second that a transaction is swiped, and the average receipt at Ramp is turned in 30 minutes after a transaction. It is a total step function change, and it's not by saying how can we cut all the steps, but actually could you redesign a new process really around the problems that businesses are trying to solve, and that's a lot of the fundamental difference in design.
I think just tracking that number has an effect on the team and the way they work. Like I'd be surprised if some of the incumbents even track speed of receipt as a KPI. Sometimes feel like a lot of them have just done a lot of effort convincing the ultimate buyer, whether it's a head of finance or a controller, and giving them control at the expense of sort of like more time wasted from all the people that have to deal with that system. So it's like they've taken that, like a lot of pain that one person has and distributed that across like the company, as opposed to trying to automate it away, which is what we're trying to work on.
One of the things that first excites me, I think, most about the company is thinking about what happens to the role of the finance team. Because, I have the person that I can picture in my head who had to chase me down for those receipts, who can now do something more strategic with their time. What are you seeing your customers who are not chasing people down for receipts, or saving time in all these different ways? Like, what are they doing for their companies now?
Yeah. So one, finance teams don't really enjoy being the bad cop. Like, it's weird on both ends of the relationships. And so I think a lot of it is actually just even repairing the way that people interact with each other and seeing people on the other end not as like people who are trying to nag, but actually having their time freed up so they can actually work on really valuable things, figuring out how companies can either grow revenues, cut expenses, be more profitable, frankly, just go home. And so I think, generally usually what we see happening is the ratio of where people are spending their time is going from these low value task-based items to actually much higher strategic planning looking out. I'd say is the most common. I'd say others are taking more time. I think like it's going home earlier, taking vacations, just living their lives, frankly, not chasing stuff down for receipts, manually inputting invoices and the like are the two most common, I hear.
Happy finance.
Yeah.
I mean, the other analogy I like about this, when I see you're wearing a Nora ring and all sorts of trackers, right? Imagine if you weren't tracking any of that and we're still trying to make life improvements, right? Like you'd have to spend a lot of time like guessing what you ate, what you didn't, sort of like guessing your way into better health. And instead, if you have automated tracking and you're not having to waste and spend time thinking about that stuff, you can actually think about how to interpret those numbers and make better decisions. And it's the same thing with finance teams. They're not just spending their time chasing receipts and trying to guess their way into profitability or better performance. They actually have all the like tracking and analysis like sort of like pre-done for them, and they can think strategically about the future and make better decisions.
January 1st that I like literally stuck to like every day until February 17th or something, and then it was like totally done. So yeah, that analogy lands well. Moving to a different new product that I think opens this like door to this whole new world, which is travel. So how did you come to build travel? And then we need to get into like kind of what it means to own the transaction layer, but let's start with travel.
Yeah. I'm super happy. So one, I think that so it was an incredibly different approach than anything that's ever been done in the industry. And I say that if typically when you see credit card companies or people in the space add travel to the platform, it's come to our website, use our platform, upload your policies, and tell people to use this portal that probably has more expensive prices than elsewhere on the industry. There's things that are really frustrating, and it only works if you do things in this way. And a lot of the initial insight was, how can you meet people where they are and not force them to use a new platform? Because it's not always great to change behavior. Often people are doing what they're doing for good reasons. Often there's better pricing available elsewhere. And rather than trying to go against the current, let's really try to figure out how we can take the data, take the signals that are coming through and help automate around it. And so what's unique about Ramp for travel is it's actually there is zero work required for any employee to use it. They just simply take a Ramp card, buy on Expedia, buy on Priceline, buy on a managed travel platform, whatever they're using already. From the credit card data itself, we can approve or deny it based off of the policies that companies already have in place through Ramp. Pull the data directly from the merchant, and then as receipts are put in, we'll actually go and verify and automatically run checks, see things like, was it in the class, was it first class, was it business, was it economy, was it in or out of policy, based on the complex rules. It'll automatically associate per diem. So if you go and fly to Miami, you take an Uber, you have dinners, Ramp can identify these trips are all in one place. And so at the end, if you want to do things like bill back transactions to someone, let's say you were there for a photo shoot, or you were there for a client visit, or for actual work, you can start to go and automate some of the downstream tasks. You can understand trips together, and also finance teams can start to get context and better understand their own company. And so at the start of it, a lot of it is really focused on how can we create value for close to 100% of the transactions from the get-go, versus doing some valuable thing for like 5% of the transaction if you're so lucky that people use your platform. And so it's first that.
That's right. Well, we basically eliminated the trade-off between control and better prices, right? Like if you use the consumer portal, generally you get better prices because it's just so competitive, and they operate very much like the social media companies of our time. Like they're all craving for your attention, and they're like hyper optimized, like the color of the button and like the pop-up they show you at the right time. Or you sort of like forced to use that corporate travel portal, and they don't really have any competition because your company's forcing you to use them, and their prices tend to be higher. And we've broken that trade-off, essentially. You get the controls without the compromise on prices.
Totally. And I think like there's a bit of a question of like, why didn't anyone else do this? In some ways, this is so value creating for customers on the other end. It actually gives you the flexibility, the control, all this stuff. And typically, companies in our industry have optimized just for one thing, which is high revenue, high margins. They don't think very much about what is actually going to help customers on the other end save time and save money. And we started with that center with the mission. And we think that by being able to do this, one, the value of the platform itself has gone a lot up, but two, it starts to create the room to understand, back to our mission of saving money again, of like, where are people spending money? Does that make sense? Were there better rates available? Could you have actually helped people arrive at a better decision? And it sets the groundwork to help companies in a much deeper way, more holistic way.
So let's talk about it, right? So to date, you have the corporate card, which those businesses traditionally haven't had software, and you have software, and those businesses haven't traditionally had corporate cards. When you combine those two, you get the transaction data, and you have these teams that are able to build software in a really fast way. The way that I picture it is that like each of these transactions are kind of going in and doing work and telling you what your customers care about, where they're spending money, where they might want to save time and money, and then you can build on top of that. How do you think about owning the transaction layer? Because I think that's an opportunity that I didn't even grasp until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of this came from like previous experiences too. So prior to this, we'd started a company that was focused entirely on helping consumers save money on. So you bought something at Amazon, the price of the TV dropped. You could get a better price if you're available. And one of our dreams was so we were bought by large credit card issuer Capital One, and we had this notion that the day after the acquisition closed, it'd be a perfect match. We would know, okay, there's millions of swipes going on every day. we could actually see live where are people making purchases. One, we could know maybe where certain stores were having discounts, sales, and could you actually go and reach out to this customer at the right time and let them know, hey, you've got a better price. It turned out that was a little naive. There was lots of complex processing that happened inside of the company through third-party providers and the like. And so actually being able to go and do simple things like a push-based alert to say, hey, you bought here, you should get some savings, to what we're trying to do here at Ramp of fully automated transaction processing and fully automated savings was far away. And then even more interesting things like, could you not only read the data from credit cards, could you actually write to the database, so to speak? Could you actually go and you could see savings, but you couldn't affect it. We had to write an email to someone. We couldn't alter the transaction anyway. And we were very, from early on, interested in this notion that, if you had a business on the other end, you had a customer that knew what they wanted. They knew they wanted to get these sets of services, but spend less on it. They knew they wanted these services, but wanted to spend less time. If you could both read and you could write based off of how a business wanted you to interact with these transactions, you might be able to help them optimize more efficiently than what they could do on their own. What does this mean? Well, maybe you're seeing lots of transactions from different companies, the same vendors. You might identify there's a lot of price discrimination going on. Maybe you could help people identify that based off of this data, get better rates. Maybe if a company knows that they're trying to optimize rates for travel. Maybe if they're trying to optimize for SaaS, you could do this. And I think this notion of, if you could actually build the base layer, read to the database, write to the database, affect it, you could actually start to make transactions finally much more intelligent. Not just movement of money, but by taking this intent signal, if people are trying to achieve this outcome for their business, optimize prior to a transaction taking place or between cycles, and help a customer on the other end arrive at a less costly, less time-intensive way to get there. And so when we think about the transaction layer, I actually think it was, I had never heard this notion of a mini app. I think Packy came up with this, but I think it was a really clever way to get at this notion of, with this intent to transact, you could build intelligence overlaid on that transaction and improve the transaction itself.
How big is that opportunity? Like, how big is business spend globally? How much do you think that you can capture? You said you started at 0.000% of credit card spend. Like, how big is the whole thing, and how much do you think you can own there?
Yeah, one of our partners, Visa, had put out estimates, I think it was 3 years ago, that there was $120 trillion of B2B payments, business payments in the US, gross, if you want to look internationally. And so it is enormous, the amount of funds that companies are moving. And today, most of it is ACH, check, wire, but nevertheless, there's a lot of money moving in between different corporate hands. We think that, first there's this first order opportunity, which, whether it's businesses like American Express, on the card side, Bill.com, on the ACH side, very valuable institutions just on the movement of funds. But we think that if you can not just move funds more efficiently, but add value above it, if you can help every dollar go a lot further, and get into fundamentally intelligence, we're far cry from businesses like Google, like Facebook, and the like, that have helped improve the efficiency of reach of advertising, of knowledge itself. But we think that if you can overlay that into functionally how money moves, there's a lot there. There really is.
How do you build? We talked about the product team and how you build teams to build products quickly, but you're an $8 billion company in just a couple of years, since launching the product. There's a really, huge opportunity ahead of you. How do you think about building a company to be generational and kind of building out the organization to support, an ambition that big?
I think, every generation company started with like people, right? You look, we look in awe, and like it's also part of the reason we selected the investors we selected. But like if you look at the early PayPal team as an example, like PayPal was a incredible company. Still is an incredible company. But really, a lot of value was also created by the people who were there early outside of PayPal later. For the ones who don't know, Elon Musk was part of that early team. Keith Rabois, who's our primary investor, is part of that team. Max Levchin as well at Affirm, like lots of folks who went on to build incredible companies after PayPal. And a lot of it is just being really, really intentional about the people you hire early on. And we do put a lot of time and effort into our interviews, extracting the signals that we want to extract, and truly trying to find people who are exceptional in one area more than solving for zero defects, right? Like we will make mistakes and we want to take some risks. Like the goal is to find exceptional ability in an area that we need. And I think putting these people together and being transparent in the way we make decisions, in particular, context is, I think, very important. And give people interesting problems, then they're not just implementing solutions. They're actually like trying to figure out different potential solutions. In some cases, exploring new problems that we haven't thought about. And I think a lot of that magic is created by the people that you get, well, in the company and in the different rooms, and that's why we spend. I mean, definitely spent most of my time with like exploring opportunities with new people, recruiting, interviewing, and with junior folks who've joined us recently as well. So
Yeah.
When you get those people in the door,
yeah,
to have that many kind of like incredibly talented people, when we went through the list, there's like international, math and coding and whatever, gold medalists, Rhodes scholars, bachelors. When you have people like that in the door, they're like, how do you get them to work together? Because it feels like, a lot of superstars could be an amazing thing if you can harness it, and a really, really tough thing if you can't.
yeah.
How do you do it?
Well, I think it gets hard when there's sort of like an oversupply of talent and an undersupply of problems. That's certainly not the case for us. We like have our hands full with an oversupply of like challenging problems that we can solve. So there's sort of like more than enough to go around. So that makes it a little bit easier. So you got to keep increasing the size of your ambition as you bring more people, because what can make it really tricky is you have like all these super talented, ambitious people and just like not enough hard or interesting or ambitious problems for them to work on.
Yeah. And I also think orientation
Yeah.
matters a lot. Like whenever we're setting goals internally as a company, it's not, hey, we need to ship this thing. We need to achieve this much in terms of revenue. It's, or things. It's much more oriented around goals that in some ways are unattainable. There is no amount of money that you could save that you could say we've saved all the money possible. There's no amount of time that you could say with a straight face there was no way to help people save even more time. And I think that orienting around a much larger mission allows people who in many ways are very competitive to orient around how do I actually go and solve this big problem, and how do I organize work around this, and have many approaches that are aligned in intent, but competitive in approach. I think sometimes like Amazon was famous for the two pizza rule, where you could have different small teams focus on one large problems and give people the agency in place to go and do that. I would say is one, and I think second is in terms of my job and my responsibility. I know Karim views this in a lot of the same way, where in trying to figure out how, as we've gone from, at one point we were 33% of the headcount. Today we are about 0.3% of the headcount each. Together we're not even a point of the company. A lot of our job is really about bringing out people's potential. One of my heroes is a guy named John Wooden, who I think now won the most NCAA titles for college basketball in history. And when he thought about his job, it was never about getting the highest score. It was not about winning championships. A lot of his job was understanding people's potential and helping people really ask, did you do your best? Did you try? Did you focus? And creating the conditions for people to do extraordinary work. Like as time goes on, in much less relevant to the day-to-day, but trying to really ask and understand what are the conditions by which people can be productive, that people can work with one another, or their resource constraints. Do we not have the right team? Do we have the right team, not the right set of problems, the right orientation, and focusing on creating that? And if we can do that, I don't know. I mean, I think probably everyone, both here and even on this call, have experienced times when it's an amazing team, but just something isn't right. You can't go and solve these big problems, and just trying to create that space for it.
I think before we get to audience questions, just kind of one snapshot in time, look back over the past 3 years of running this company, 2 years of being live in market. What are the lessons that you learned? Like the things you just got really lucky on? It looks like from the outside, everything's just kind of like chugging along steadily, but what are those kind of turning points and lessons that you picked up along the way?
Gotta think about that one a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give a couple things. So one, um, a lot of what we targeted this time around was not, let's go in 10x this year, or let's go and hit this very high watermark. Those are interesting. That'd be great to think about those kind of things out in the future. But a lot of this was on how do we grow 10% this week? What can we do to grow 20% this month? And it allows you to start to focus and make these trade-offs. It can be very confusing, I think, as an early stage business or as a business with large ambitions to figure out what do I do first, what do I do second. And so focusing actually on the nearer allows you to figure out what gives you leverage today, what's going to run out later, and start to both be laying the track before the train is going through and focusing on the most important things soonest, and then figuring out what's going to give you leverage later based on hypotheses and running a lot of tests later on. And so a lot of this is not about these grandiose visions, but actually here and now, what can we do this month to save customers more time? What can we do this month in order to grow and reach businesses that actually can benefit from this today? Instead of being grandiose. And so a lot of it is just that. I think I've had plenty of other lessons, trying to make sure we're thoughtful, not just for customers, but others in the ecosystem, I think has been important. Seeing the bigger picture has been a lot, but day by day, I think it's really, really been an year.
And I mean, that's gonna sound a little cliche, but like adaptability is just like so important. Like when we launched, like no one could have predicted it, but like the pandemic was just starting to become a thing in the US, and we're launching this uh, corporate card solution for businesses, and like so many businesses were on the verge of like bankruptcy or going bust, and we had to like try to figure out how to like assess risk really quickly, and no one had the context because it was all like brand new, like which businesses are gonna struggle, why, how can we help them, how can we support them without taking too much risk, and that's when you know that why I just felt like very, very proud of our team at the time because like we were all working remotely and it was brand new to all of us. We had to get like our hands dirty and figure out like business by business, like does it make sense or not? And I think it made us sort of like stronger and better for it. And like we built a very strong sort of and data driven like foundation for risk really early on. And I think we're much better off today because of it. But it was mostly accidental and just a fruit of adapting to the situation at hand.
I mean, it feels like the two that you just said go so hand in hand, right? Which is like thinking this far ahead and also being able to adapt. Like those two do work really nicely. So maybe there's some co-founder magic. So enough for me, I think. I'm gonna go see if we have any questions from the audience, which we do. So, who are some of your more unique customers? Any stories that you want to share?
There's some great ones. I mean, one of my favorite customers, and so I was chatting with our head of product about this last week, and he told me he's like, whenever you're feeling a little bit like down or depressed, just like watch one of our like sell videos or like interviews with our customers and the farming industries because we have a few of those. It'll make you very happy. It's like, oh, why? It's like, well, because they're not used to seeing like such a good software, and the industry has been so antiquated that whenever we're giving them a demo of like a receipt matching algorithm, they're completely mind blown and very happy because it saves them in some cases like more than a week of work a month. So yeah, I love these stories. I mean, so some of the oldest farms in America are using our platform now, and not something that I would have predicted.
All over. I mean, initially, one of the CFOs first, believe it or not, found it on Product Hunt. This was a farm that was started, I believe, in the 1940s, where it turns out, like just like a lot of us, like into cool technology, ways to kind of modernize, see what's coming around the corner, and so gave it a shot. And before I knew it was one of our largest customers. But I think a lot of this is just people talk, and most of our growth, you know, even today is not paid. It's not coming through channels that are ads driven. I wish we were better at it. A lot of this is really on people who have a good experience and talk about it, even today.
This is a little bit of a tougher one. Ramp has raised a huge amount of funding in a really short period. Is your growth part of the fintech bubble?
Okay, so great question. I think about this in a couple things. One, first, something that's unique and may not be as apparent from the outside in is the way that Ramp has grown so quickly has been from just a lot of inbound interest. And so we were really fortunate that for the people who are closest to the numbers, the dynamics, were actually the ones who time and time again said, we love to invest more and go behind that. And a lot of the reasons that we think they did that come from one, just the rapid pace of growth. We're adding more cardholders every 2 weeks than we did in the first 2 years of the company's life. We grew revenue by a factor of 10 times over. Certainly I think there's been a lot of folks in the fintech industry who certainly have raised a lot. We're looking to live up to both, numbers as a business to support that, as well as outcomes for customers as well. I think it's that. I think next, when I think a lot of people get nervous about bubbles, it can come back from people not really being prudent with their funds. Something that's on the minds of a lot of both business owners, CFOs, as well as board members and executives out there is to the extent that interest rates keep rising, there's a potential slowdown or recession globally. Cutting expenses, saving money, saving time, and being efficient really, really, really matters. There's a lot of excitement about Ramp as a company that not only could do that, but is doing that today. So in many ways, this notion of helping people save based off of where the market may or may not head is part of what's motivated people to bet behind Ramp, and we're looking to do our very best day in and day out to live up to that. No matter what happens, the people that we're responsible to are our customers. My job fundamentally is to help them succeed, run a better business, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the funds go to great use.
What does it feel like to be inside of something that just grows this quickly and frankly raises this much money?
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely feels. I used to think about that analogy of like you're just like playing. I love playing poker, right? So it's a little bit like you won a tournament and then you're playing at another tournament and then you keep like graduating. Like the stakes might go up, but your game doesn't really change. The people you're playing against might get a little bit better, but generally like the best strategy there is just like keep focusing on the things that you're really good at and playing the same game if it's poker or like operating and with a lot of the same principles in our case. So really I think it's both increased responsibility and stakes, but also the increased ability to attract even more amazing people. I mean, we can go international in our talent search now, which I'm very excited about. There's some amazing people internationally that would love to work with us as well, and just work on even harder problems and take on bigger competitors. I think it's just going to be fun to do it with the team that we have today and the one that we're building.
Two more.
No.
Second to last, the penultimate question is, what kind of trade-offs did Ramp have to make to grow so quickly?
I'm sure we've had to make tons of trade-offs. I mean, on the like engineering realm, you often hear about like tech debt and shortcuts you have to take. And I certainly don't have this like one view that like tech debt is absolutely bad. It's just like regular debt, right? Like if the interest rate is low and you're gonna get I guess a windfall in the future, then like you might as well just take the debt now so that you can get to your destination a little bit faster, and then you pay it down when you get the funds. And there's something very similar in engineering, where like in what some of the things we've built early, we had no idea if we're going to survive for an extra year. So it doesn't make sense to think about building it with 5 or 10 years in mind. But as we've raised more rounds and now can make like much longer term bets, I think the building things for scale in the super long term tends to become more important. In some cases, we have to rebuild some parts of our stack. But I think those are the right trade-offs. Those were the right trade-offs to make at the time. So
just like magic predicted the last question, which is how is your internal platform preparing for the rapid influx of customers that will no doubt continue to flow in?
Well, the good thing about that is it's actually a lot easier to do it in B2B than it is in consumer. I mean, our previous company was a lot smaller in terms of both revenue and valuation, but was handling billions of emails for tens of millions of customers. In the case of businesses, they tend to, well, you don't need that many businesses to build a very valuable company with lots of revenue. So the scaling challenges are, in some cases, a little bit easier. Now, we are dealing with much more sensitive data, and we take that very seriously. So I think the building a very hardened platform and caring about security tends to be a more challenging task and a very important task, more than just dealing with large volumes, which I think we've been battle tested on, and is always fun. No.
Guys, thank you so much. Everybody out there watching, thank you for watching. I've learned a ton. This has been great, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Boom. Awesome. This was great. Let's go.
Ramp is the only spend management platform that helps you spend less. Let's see how it works. Issue virtual or physical cards in seconds with limits and controls for any type of expense. Then use your card anywhere and submit receipts the moment you spend, right from your phone. Ramp automatically matches receipts to the right transaction, so you never have to fill out expense reports again. But it gets even better. Connect to popular software like QuickBooks and NetSuite, and automate your accounting so you can close your books 5 times faster. Ramp gives your business the ultimate competitive advantage with all your subscriptions in a single place and automatic insights that maximize every dollar. With Ramp, you're always tuned in, with visibility into trends across your entire company and real-time alerts on any channel, like SMS or Slack. That's how easy it is to spend smarter with Ramp.